Welcome to another episode of the Operation Redwood podcast. I'm here with my good friend, my brother, Jeff Abiera. He is a pastor. He is an entrepreneur. He's built a lot of really cool stuff. And the thing I'm excited for is he's actually one of our confirmed speakers for our men's conference this summer.
Yes.
So Jeff, welcome to the show, brother. I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Super excited to hang out and talk and have a good conversation.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think one of the really cool things I like about you is, yes, you're a pastor, but you don't look like the typical suit wearing type pastor. And I think you reach a really cool demographic of people that are in the younger generation that don't necessarily relate with a suit and tie pastor, but they see someone who believes in God, who is biblically rooted and kind of looks and sounds like them in some aspects.
That's mad love. I received that. Your tita and my mom just told us to connect, and we were like, all right, fine, we'll do it. And then it ended up being a genuine, encounter and interaction. And honestly, I've been praying for other leaders to meet, and I think it's an answered prayer that we got to connect in that way.
Dude, it definitely is an answered prayer for the both of us, because I think there's a type of man that, and I think a lot of our viewers and listeners for Redwood really relate with this, but the type of man that has ambition, that wants to build, that wants to be part of something greater than themselves. But there's a certain part of, maybe they're a believer, maybe they're not, but for the ones that are believers, there's a part of them that doesn't feel worthy, or they don't feel Christian pursuing some of their ambitions. And I think that's actually by design. I think the things that we want in life, the things that we desire, are actually by design. What are your thoughts on that?
As far as building, I do think like the imagination side of us is a reflection of just the creative side of God. So I think we shouldn't ignore it, but I think we should also be wise on what do we actually start building. You know what I mean? Because like for me, I'll be honest, before I just wanted to build and build and build. Whenever it was a good idea, all right, let's build that. Whenever it's a good opportunity, hey, let's try it. But I'm at the point where less is more now.
Yeah.
And like the past year I've been like really, I took a sabbatical, which is like an extended rest. God just gave an opportunity. I had support, a family. My wife held it down with the bills. And I really kind of focused on what it meant to live a quiet life. And in that season, I didn't realize that when I was like resting and really Sabbathing with God and just recovery and a lot of healing, like I was still building during the rest, but it was more just building foundation versus like it was building foundation with my relationship with Christ versus building like another ministry. And I think through that, I think the next ministries I'm going to be able to build, man, my hope is that they would just be things that go beyond, you know, my presence or my involvement. Yeah.
I love that, because I think that's something that, see, everything you've said, there's so many correlations with entrepreneurship and also the stewardship and faith aspect of it. Because as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, I've always kind of been, that's a great idea, I can build that. And then it's like, okay, who do I need to connect with, or who do I need on my team to go build that? So it's always like you're chasing all these opportunities.
Yeah.
And then as you get a little bit older, a little bit wiser, you start to think like, okay, maybe not saying yes to everything is a good idea. And let's build with a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more discernment. But I think that comes, and I'd like to get your opinion on this, that comes over time. I believe that after you've done everything you could, and then you get to the point in life where like, God, I'm tired of doing this my way. What will you have for me? And I think most men will do as much as we can until we realize that that's it. I've reached the end of my limits, and then we'll look for God. Versus what you're saying is like, you've done that, but now let's look for God first before we start to
Yeah.
build.
Yeah, definitely. Like the past so there's always opportunity. I think like in the beginning, every opportunity you should take it just to gain those reps, you
Right.
know? But eventually, you know, that's not sustainable. Like for me, like I was during my rest season last year, so I came out of burnout. A lot of a lot of church stress, ministry stress. It really weighed me down. So when I took that really intentional time to actually have rest, like mind, body, and spirit, like I realized that that was something that had to be done. And if I was going to build things again, man, it had to be if there was a clear green light from God. You know, I was like, God, I'm not moving unless like this is very clear because I don't want to burn out again,
Yeah.
you know. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And then also the scripture that says better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls and chasing after the wind. That's been something that's been really like a new principle in the way I move now.
I love that. I love that because I feel that same similar path where I need to say no so that I can no to more things so I can actually align with where God's calling me to be.
Yeah.
Not what Angelo wants and what Angelo thinks, but what do you want from me, God?
Yeah.
I take it like I have this imagery of like walking with God, right? You're walking with him stride by stride. And before my younger self would he would give me in a direction. He would give me a little bit of the mission.
Yeah.
He would start telling me, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I got it. And I just start running off,
Yeah.
and I'll start building and building, and then I'll fall or I'll mess up or something. I'll come back, and he's like, well, you didn't let me finish, and he gives me a little bit more. I'm like, oh, okay, I got it now, and I'll go back again before getting the whole story. And now I'm starting to learn, just like what you're saying, is to in stride with God, because His pace is not our pace. And even though we move slow intellectually, we don't think that we're going to get a lot done. But it's crazy because ever since really diving into the word and dedicating and surrender my life to God, especially surrendering Redwood,
Yeah.
what do you want from this? Things are happening quicker. Things are happening arguably easier than anything I could have grinded for to build it the way we're building it now.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And like for me to jump in just from the sideline and see that in real time, it's a really cool thing to see. Like I really see God have his hand on this.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You can when we first met, you and I was literally praying, God, I will do what you're telling me to do, but you need to help me out. You need to send the right people.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. And then I think you and I connected that same day or that same afternoon. And I'm like, huh.
And we were both dragging our feet.
Yeah, we're both dragging our feet, right? And it just happened, right?
Yeah.
And a day too early could
Yeah.
have been different. A week
Right.
too early would have been like we may both have never been not in the same mindset or whatever.
Yeah.
But that timing and the way it happened, we were both in like the right spot to receive whatever we needed to receive from that relationship.
Yeah.
So it's an honor to have you here. I wanted to go more into your story, but we're in the fire now. So I love where we're at. I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited that you're going to speak on stage for us. That's a huge thing. I know that's, I don't take that lightly because you have to also pick and choose. And I appreciate that just as much as all the other speakers. Let me ask you something. We were talking yesterday, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was kind of we had briefly touched on these missed opportunities because I'm coming out of a season where I have given everything to Redwood to the point where our president, Samuel Johnson, he asked me, what other goals do you have in life? I'm like, outside of Redwood, right now, nothing. And he's like, that's crazy. He's like, ever since I've met you, you've always had goals in all these different aspects in your life. This is the first time you have nothing else going on. Like your focus is just this.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, whoa, that's a little alarming because it's one thing to dedicate everything you it's one thing to go all in on something, but then my challenge is sometimes when I go all in, I go too all in and I kind of like forget everything else. I get like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And I think today's culture will usually praise that.
Yeah.
You need to go all in. You need to dedicate 100%. But when you're a father, when you're a husband, when you have people and responsibilities to steward and lead, being all 100% into something means you're 0% in everything else. Like there's none of this BS where like I'm 120% in. Like, no, it's only 100%. But if you're really all in on everything else in one thing, then you're just really giving the bits and pieces to everything else. Does that does that resonate with you? Like, do you feel like you were in that place too when you wanted to build, but also like your God is calling you to something different in life?
Like, in regards to my burnout or
Yeah. Yeah, like in regards to when you burnt out, is that kind of how you felt too?
uh so I'll kind of backtrack a little bit. So I went into ministry pretty young, like right after high school. Started my first ministry job at 19, and I was in school too, and then I'd commute to the church every weekend. So I did actually burn out before already too. So I would say in college, my junior year, I burned out because I was just so involved. I was doing some like dance teams while going to school full time, also working part time as a youth pastor and commuting like 120 miles every weekend, like one way. Yeah, or it was 90 miles, but then with that Chicago traffic, it was insane. Yeah, so I burned out once during that time. Took some time away from ministry too after I graduated, got married, and then went into ministry again. And it was like I went in like full force, like all that I did was for the ministry. And I'll be honest, my marriage suffered in the beginning because I was like, hey, I'm doing God's work. I was part of a dance ministry. I was helping start a ministry, another one, and then I was involved in like these national and regional conferences as well. And it was all good, right? But I don't think people realize how in ministry you kind of see like some of the darkest things and
Mm.
the darkest sins within the church. Like, you know, we go to church because of our sin, right? And then as a pastor, sometimes you see some things that are actually kind of traumatizing. Just the amount of like stories that involve abuse and manipulation. And then it got to a point where I would hear about scandals, right? And then it would always be a far story. But once scandals happened from the people that I highly respected and loved, that's when it really weighed on me. Yeah, so I think the combination of those buckets that you're talking about, like having 100% here, then 0% goes to here, or maybe it's like 90% here and then 10% here, like learning how to balance marriage, ministry, and then eventually having kids. It was hard, you
Mm.
know, but there was a moment where I decided that my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife and my kids, that became the buckets that I wanted to put into the most. And I do think every single time something has to take sacrifice. And it's like, what's gonna matter the most? Like for a father, I'm only gonna have that opportunity once, that shot once,
Yeah.
As a husband, that should be once as well. For ministry, honestly, man, ministries
Oh,
can
that's
come and go.
crazy. I never thought about
Ministries can
that.
come and go. I think like
Mm.
a lot of people have idolized ministry in the sense that, yeah, it's for God, you know, but it could also be for yourself, it could be filling a part of you that's insecure. So I really had to ask myself, what is a eternal perspective on my energy now? Yeah. And what had to take sacrifice? And it was hard, I'll be honest, like not having the title of pastor. I'll be honest, I was working at a car wash for uh for some time, and then and people would see me at the drive up and be like, "Hey, Pastor Jeff, you know, like, what you doing working at this car wash?"
Blessing your car. That's
Yeah,
all we're
I'm trying to
doing here. Yeah.
baptize your
You're
car,
trying to
man.
baptize your car.
But
You may go.
there was a moment where I was like, I don't have the title that I used to put so much of my identity in, you know? And that was a great learning experience. I just focused on there was 3 words that I focused on during my entire healing season. It was just, I'm a child of God, I'm loved by God, and I'm the light of the world. And those 3 things grounded me so well, where now I'm not trying to like I don't think I was trying to ever earn God's love in ministry, but I will say there were parts of ministry where I did like the power, you know, and it sucks to say that, but it did feel good to be called a pastor. Yeah. It did feel good to be handed a mic. So when I didn't have those things, it reminded me that following God's a lot more simple, you know, and he doesn't care if you got a mic in your hand or not. Yeah, that was just kind of the learning experience. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many things you're hitting on that is so relevant to me now.
Yeah.
Because the day of this recording, uh, I told you we had an event at my daughter's school
Right.
before you came over to record, and it was just a bunch of firefighters, paramedics, law enforcement.
Yeah.
Just they show their cars, their vehicles to the kids so they can kind of like get around it and stuff. And I remember doing that stuff when I was a cop in California. And I remember when we did that, I'm like, hey, when I have kids, I would love for them to come here and see this. And I never had that opportunity because obviously I got retired out before we had Lana. And this was the first time that she saw what a SWAT vehicle looked like, what, the equipment that we were using. And she even noticed like because there was an operator there and he had like the tac vest and all geared out. Yeah. And then Lana was like, Papa, that's like what you have. And then I was like, that's what I used to do, baby. And then she was like, really? Like, cause she knew like I used to be a cop, but she never knew like, she never really pieced it together. At least visually, she hasn't seen it. And it was like a weird feeling kind of being in that environment again. And that at the same time with my wife and kid. Yeah. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with missed opportunities. Yeah. Sometimes those missed opportunities are probably the best thing for you. Yeah. So we go back to what I was mentioning earlier with Samuel. He said something to me. He's like, we need you here as CEO. Yeah. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. He said, from all the years I've known you, and I know you've always had goals for all that. And I also remember that you get bored when you start to get closer to success. And I was like, damn, okay. So is this boredom I'm feeling? Yeah. He's like, no, I don't think it's boredom. He goes, maybe taken this to the place where obviously it's not where we end. There's still things we want to get to, but maybe you've gotten to the place where you can finally ease off the gas a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you've been giving this organization, this movement, your everything the last 3-4 years. Maybe it's time. Like we still need you. Yeah. But maybe we don't need all of you. Yeah. And I was like, oh, and he asked me, so what are you gonna build next? Because that's usually like, I'm like, all right, what's the next project? And sometimes when you fall in love with the process, right? Like the process of building and creating things from the ground up, and then you systemize it and it starts to work. And not to sound ungrateful, but sometimes you're like, well, the thrill of it is kind of done. But I don't know. Like when he said that, maybe we don't need all of you. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I don't have to give 100%. Maybe I can now give that 20% that they really need me for. And now what do I do with the rest? And I've been playing with that since yesterday. You mentioned something that you said zone of approximate or development. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so there's this thing in like learning science called the zone of proximal development. And you can also attach it to like leadership and like your staff or whoever you're leading. And it's pretty much this circle, right? And then it kind of looks like a target. So the middle, if you're in the middle, it's too easy. And because it's too easy, you get bored. Like for example, if you're learning to play basketball and you're getting pretty good and you're still just practicing layups, you're gonna get bored eventually. Obviously, you could switch up the layups and all that, but I'm just saying like a basic layup. But then on the flip side, like there is another ring. So there's three rings. The first one is where it's too easy for somebody. And then there's another ring. That's the zone of proximal development, which you want to go to. And then there's the outer ring. The outer ring is when it's like too hard. Like your ambitions are too far out there. They're not attainable. So then you just get hopeless and depressed. You know, like so for example, you know the layups, you know what I mean?
But then you try dunking the next day and you're like, you're not even
Yeah, or
close.
maybe yeah, that's a good one. Like you haven't done any training or anything, and then your coach is telling you, "Hey, all right, everybody, run some dunk lines." You know what I mean? Then you're just gonna feel hopeless and depressed. So you want to find that area where it's not too easy, but you're developing, still working hard, but it's attainable. You know, so maybe in the basketball sense, that's like someone starts working on their free throws, or maybe starts working on their step back jumper or anything like that. So the reason why I brought it up for you is like maybe maybe that's a reason. But I think Samuel's like spot on more in that sense. But I think as um like maybe it's okay to use, maybe that I don't want to say leftover, but like rearrange that 100% into a different categories and amounts. You know what I mean? Maybe it's like, I don't know, adding more date nights with your wife or more play dates with your daughter, you know, instead of, yeah, doing the 100%. I don't think you're doing 100%, just redwood. But what if that was, the thing? Like for me, one of the things that I've been trying to do lately as far as like how much of me, like I'm trying to only do like max 2 like long meetings per week. You know what I mean? And just because I'm an introvert too, I'm really trying to pace myself, like stepping back into just ministry. Cause when I was resting, I was actually not seeing, there was I think 3 months where I didn't talk to anybody except for family.
Really?
Yeah.
Intentionally.
Intentionally. I was kind of like going into like a monk mode, you know? Yeah. No social
You
media.
plan that?
I
Like
planned
that's
it.
what you
Yeah.
want.
And I told people, like, hey, I'm probably not going to respond
And if you
for,
see me at the
for
car
X
wash,
amount.
go to a different car wash because I'm not talking to you.
During that time, I actually wasn't working at all.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was really in just really focused on that quiet life. Yeah. So maybe even for you, man, maybe that percentage can just go towards living a little bit quiet. You know what I mean?
I feel that. I really feel that in my soul because like I've said to you, like fitness has always been part of me ever since we were young. Just
Yeah.
consistent discipline. It was built into like our DNA. In the last couple months, I've really just not cared to work out or anything. I'll still get some minimal stuff done, but it's really just like pulling teeth. Like I don't want to do it. Like I have no motivation. I have no inspiration to go work out. because it's different, right? Like when I was a cop, I would think about these workouts, and I remember I was benching and it was heavy. I don't remember the exact weight, but I remember like putting it down, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be tough, and I'm putting it up, and and I get maybe like a quarter of the way up, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be tough, and then I started to replay the things that I would hear on the street,
Yeah.
like the fights that I would get into and the shit talking that would
Yeah.
happen, and I would just like I would tap into that and like just like muscle it up,
Yeah.
and it was like David Goggins talks about it with like dipping into the cookie jar,
Yeah.
when these moments where you need like a boost or you need something
Yeah.
to get you over that edge, and that's what I would do, and it was a very real thing because I'm like, if I don't work out, if I am not fit, I will suffer. My job will suffer. I might die. So like the motivation's right there, right? There's an easy, fire under your ass to
Yeah.
perform. But even in business, right? You're competing with other businesses and to survive
Yeah.
and to grow. So like this competition was like really real. And then now in ministry, even though it has a lot of similarities to business, it's not necessarily hitting that for me. And yes, there's an enemy, and yes, it's, the battle is not of the flesh, right?
Right.
But then there's parts where I'm like, I know that in here and in here, but it's
Yeah.
not lighting that fire.
Yeah.
Like, and I just struggled for the last couple months. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, I didn't understand.
Yeah. So have you kind of gone through the whys behind that, or
Why what? Exactly. Why I feel that like that?
yeah, why you think
I
maybe
think
that's happening?
I think I think my soul is partially craving competition. I think it's a healthy competition,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I don't think competition
Not like
is evil
right,
whatsoever.
but I think there's. I mean, with everyone getting, the little kids, everyone's getting like participation trophies nowadays. Kind of taking the essence of competition and the character development that can come from that from a young age. That's a separate thing. But I think like there's like what am I how are we going to compete in Redwood, right? Like, oh, we saved more souls for Jesus, right? Like that's
Yeah.
I don't want to make it into that either, right? Because that's how
Yeah.
you totally you can your pride and all that stuff can get into the way, and I'm like that's not what I want. But there's still something I'm internally that I feel like there's a competition that I want, that I in a sense crave.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I also feel like this rebalancing and this reallocation of my time and energy and how that's being spent. Because and ever since Samuel mentioned that yesterday, it's been on my mind because everything I do and everything I build or pursue, it's always been 100%.
Yeah.
But what if I'm called to just dabble in that?
Yeah. Well, I got a question. Have you ever rested 100%?
Bro, I want to say maybe not 100%, maybe 50% is the most I've probably
Yeah.
rested. And that was when in the timeline between releasing equity in the different businesses and then just completely surrendering to God and like literally because I had no other thing. I had no idea. I had no like direction. I had just no options. And I think that was a point in life where I'm like, well, now that I let go of these businesses, now I have nothing else. All right. So I guess like I just gotta hang out. And then a couple months later, I get into our church's security team, and that's kind of where the ministry and everything else started.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I think for a short period I did. And I think that was kind of maybe that was what I really needed, where God had me slow down just enough to see this opportunity. And from that opportunity came Redwood.
Yeah, that's huge. I think even, you know, yeah, obviously we should rest, you know, but we shouldn't get lazy. God set up the work 6 days and then rest one.
Yeah.
I think there is a temptation to rest maybe too much also.
Yeah.
For me, I'm still trying to find that balance coming out of burnout because I would run really hard before where I could do a lot and have a high capacity, but I just don't know where my high capacity is now, because there were some days where easy things were so hard,
Yeah.
where I
Get that.
just couldn't do it, and that was because of the burnout, you know what I mean? But now that I've kinda rested, and I'm still learning how to rest.
Rest is biblical, and the grind culture is not how it's supposed to be. See, I believe that the grind started when Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
Wow.
I think like God gave Adam work, God gave Eve
Yeah.
like, hey, you guys got this whole thing, just steward it, just don't eat from that one thing. That don't just everything else easy peasy. You're good. But then when they disobeyed and then they got kicked out and they had to build everything on their own, they had to grow everything on their own. I'm like, I think that is when the grind happened.
Wow. I just realized, so in the garden, obviously, Bible says that they tended to it and they worked it, but everything was there, and then even the principle of, like, farming and harvesting, there is in the scripture, it talks about having a jubilee year
Mm.
where
I think abundance isn't
or
it?
not just a jubilee year, but I think every 7 years, like, God was saying to stop even planting things, to let the ground recover so that it would have harvest again, so that the nutrients would get replenished into the soil, and so that even the ground could rest. You know what I mean? But in the garden, you know, prior to the fall, things were just growing in its natural state. Like, maybe I'm filling in the blanks. I don't know. But maybe, what if they weren't having to throw some seeds around at all
Right.
because it was just growing exactly how it's supposed to be, and it probably tasted so good. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's what I was thinking about. When did the grind culture start?
Yeah.
Like, and I get it though. Like, as men, that's kind of how we're taught to be men.
Yeah.
That's how we're taught to add value into the world. That's how we were taught. Our identity is to work hard, provide, grind,
Yeah.
sacrifice, and those are all they're good things. We're called to do these things, but there's this element of rest that we're talking about that we're almost just overlooking, and we're not taking that time to sharpen the axe or even put the axe completely down and just step away. And those are kind of the thoughts that were in my mind. And I'm like, yeah, I think that is when the grind culture started, was when Adam and Eve now had to work for everything they're going to have.
Yeah, maybe work in the garden before the fall was just simply just living, and then after, it was working to survive, or maybe working to hide their shame of the past or
Yeah.
their
Oh.
mistakes. Maybe, you
Oh.
know?
Because imagine, now they're like in the desert, like right when they get kicked out of the garden. They're like, man, now they realize it was so good in the garden. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
so smooth and easy. We had everything set up. Like we were in alignment with where
Yeah.
God wanted. And now you tell me you gotta plant this seed, we gotta water it and gotta wait.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well, with a lot of people that are in the grind culture, I've always one thing I noticed is whoever's really grinding and you ask them why, they can usually give you one statement of why they're doing it. It's like for example, one person could be like, because I never want to feel the way I felt when I lost everything
yeah.
again. You know, trying to avoid something happening again.
Mm.
You know, Adam, man, he probably did not want to feel that moment of, you
I
know,
told you not to eat from
exile
there. I told
again.
you not.
You know? But we don't know, that we're just filling in the blanks. But
Yeah.
but what if that's the reason why so many men for generations have grinded so hard? It's because they don't want to feel a certain way again. Or maybe they don't want to, maybe their dad said, hey, you're not going to amount to anything. And they don't ever want to feel that again, you
See,
know?
I love that we're here in this on this topic because I think that um most people will either run away from something or run towards something. And when I look back at my law enforcement career, or actually post law enforcement, every business I built after that was to run away from something because I did not want, like, when I got injured and I lost my career and it was like this crazy identity crisis and I went into a dark place, I remember I'm like, I'm never going to feel this again.
Yeah.
I'm never going to let the world dictate what I can and can't be. So now it feels like I'm running towards something, but in reality, I was running away from this pain that I had felt before. And this is one of the first times in my life now with Redwood and like I need to run towards the man that God called me to be,
Yeah.
not away from the pain that I used to feel. And it's a different motivation. When I, we were talking about earlier with the workout stuff, that was like a dark energy I would like harness
Yeah.
to try to, get myself up and get it going. But
And work.
now it worked, right,
Yeah.
for the time,
Yeah.
but it's not sustainable. And to be in that constant fight or flight mode, actually, I was more in fight mode all the time. To be in that mode all the time, it was exhausting. Now that I am in this season where I'm aligning my life with who God has called men to be, who has He called me to be, it's more of running towards that man. Like, God, who did you call me to be? And it's not as smooth as, we would always like, because there's parts of you that will turn around because this process is hard. This process will require a lot of being humbled and a lot of stripping away of that old self, of that pride and ego. And it hurts. And sometimes you want to turn around and you're like, that part was way easier back then. That also hurt, but not as much as it's hurting right now, and maybe that's part of me where I'm like, I just keep turning around and it's like, nope, just focus ahead. Stop running away and just run towards where I'm telling you to go.
Yeah, I think the reason why it's the motivator before may have worked is because it worked in real time. But I think the question we got to ask ourselves, what's everlasting? I think that motivation, like having an eternal perspective, is the only thing that will motivate you forever. You know, here on this earth, yeah, like running away from your fears, your past, it does work, but it's a heavy work and it weighs on you and it weighs on you. And eventually, one day you just can't pick up the backpack again, you know? But when it's like eternal, we start running. And the crazy thing is, like, in my mind, when I think about like running towards something, running towards God, you know, it becomes lighter, and the things that seem are supposed to be hard become easier, which is a wild thing. It's hard to explain, you know, and even his timing, sometimes it takes longer, but then he can switch things like right overnight, just with a divine anointed like task that he's given you. If you just run with it, man, I'm learning. I wish like, for example, right now I'm interested in church planning. I'm praying about it. I'm going through a process. But if it was under my timeline, man, I would have already been
Yeah, it would have been
doing it.
built already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least like started. But God's put me in this like incubation period where the only thing I can do, or like I feel like he wants me to do, is really just pray and be around people and just love the people that's right in front of me. And with this interim, right now I'm doing an interim pastor position for a church that has gone through a lot. They lost like a lot of their staff due to some struggles. So I'm there for more for stability. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to do it, but I felt like God was saying, this is the first step before you actually plant a church. Yeah, I want you to still work out some things in your heart that are not fully healed yet, and I just want you to love on these people. And And then when I tell you, then you can go. But right now, I don't feel released. But I am enjoying my time, at this church right now because I know it's temporary. They know it's temporary. So we're really,
But the
really just,
timeline's not for sure yet.
yeah, we're really just trying to enjoy the moment. One of the leaders I was talking to, he's like, man, it feels like we just met each other at the airport and your flight's about to head out, but we're having such good conversation, you know? So I'm trying to sit in that space, not rush it, but also just build into the people that are going to stay there for the long haul, even when I'm gone. So like going back to Samuel, like when he's saying maybe you don't have to do everything. I think what he's saying is, I think you've been doing the right things, but maybe the right thing is going to look different in the next season. And even if you think about Jesus, the way he raised his leaders, his disciples, what did he do? When things were going well, he left the room or he left their presence. He would go to the mountain after feeding the 5,000. He would just disappear, right? And be like, hey, you guys go over there. And I think that was actually very intentional. I think he was teaching them that what I'm teaching you, like if I'm always in the room with you, you're not going to grow to your full potential. And that's something I've been practicing in my own leadership when I'm at an event or a gathering and I really feel like it's just a great moment, great vibes. People are hungry, people are learning, people are laughing, people are crying. There's many times where I actually leave the room for a certain amount of time so that people would speak up that wouldn't speak up if I'm in the room. Or for leaders to lead, not realizing that there's an opportunity to lead. Because obviously, if we're a leader and we're in the room, people are going to look to us a lot of times. Well, what if we're not there? Then there's no opportunity to lean on it. But there's an opportunity for you to grow. So that's something that I've kind of adopted in the past several years. And I think that's what Samuel was just trying to tell you. Like, hey, if you leave the room, it's actually going to be a great thing.
Mm,
But I will say, if you leave the room too early, then things can fall apart. So the timing is important. It has to be, there's got to be a lot of wisdom and discernment there. But there's something powerful when you leave the room.
I feel that, and I feel like that is the right thing. Is maybe not completely leave, but letting more of these guys take over.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting that we're talking about this now because he's one of the newer guys in our men's group, and him and I have become really close the last 6 to 8 months. I consider him a real close friend now. Paul, he co-leads our men's group, and I was talking to another buddy Austin the other day, and I was like, dude, Paul makes it so easy.
Yeah.
Like he takes so much initiative that I literally don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be like a lazy, lazy dude and just like, all right, cool, you got it. But it was just like cool to just step back and like let him do his thing. And he's still getting the guys engaged. He's drawing different things out. And more guys are speaking up. And just like what you're saying, when you're always the loudest voice in the room, it just dims everybody else down.
Yeah.
And but when you give them an opportunity to speak up, when you give them an opportunity to lead a project or whatever, and them take full ownership of it, you're empowering them in so many different ways. And I'm learning that real time now. It's like you know these things and you've read them in books and you've studied it, but it's all just theory until you actually put experience and becomes wisdom. And I think a lot of leadership is a lot of theory from people, but they've never actually done it. They've never actually had to quiet themselves, even though in their mind they know they probably should.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of life where people know what they should do, but they don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's fun to see when things keep going without you. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little sad, I'll be honest.
Sure.
I remember when I left my dance ministry, they were doing so many shows, even in other states, and I I was with them when we did things in other states, but when they started going to like the East Coast and the West Coast, a part of me was so proud of them, so happy that they're taking the ministry like to more people, to a broader scale. But then there was a part of me that was a little sad. Like, man, I wish I was kind of still there.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I left was so I could be at home with the kids more. And but when I think about both of them in the same situation, like, yeah, it's sad, but I think that decision was still worth it in
Mm.
that season.
Yeah.
Like when I look at my kids and the amount of time that was just priceless with them,
Yeah.
like I could step back and be like, man, I'm sad, but I'm so proud of the team
Mm.
killing it still connected with them.
Yeah.
But I think there was a moment where I was like, I was kind of proud of myself too,
Yeah.
because I have failed in that area before in the past, but I actually made a decision, not just for myself, but for like the long haul and for my family. Yeah, so that was really cool. But yeah, leaving the room, that's something that's been big on me. There's like a few principles that I've just been living by. It's the handful thing, one handful versus two. It's the leave the room principle and quiet life. Yeah. So those are kind of the three things that's really sustained me.
I could see that
Yeah.
consistent with how you've been and how we've
Yeah.
met. Like you have this piece about you. Every time we talk, it's like I notice there's a piece about you that I admire, and it's interesting because we when we look at the men and the people that we surround ourselves with, we realize that there's something about them, a characteristic, a quality, or trait that we wish we had more in ourselves,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. And when I look at you, I admire how much you're in ministry and you have peace. Those are the things that I see. And you're a visionary builder just like me. So I'm like, how does this dude have that much peace? Well, I know it's Jesus. So I'm like,
Yes, sir.
there's something there. But isn't that what we should all, in some ways, strive to be?
Yeah.
A reflection of Jesus that makes other people who may not know of Jesus be like, what's something about Jeff?
Mm.
What is it?
Yeah, that's the hope, man, that we would just reflect Christ at the end of the day. That means a lot. Um, but at the same time, it's like, man, there is so much that God has done
Mm.
that people have not seen behind closed doors,
Yeah.
and there's so much that he's done in such quiet moments, that kind of allows me to step out again. And I'll be honest, I get anxious, I get depressed, I get sad. Right now, this image of myself right now, there's cameras on right now, and I can turn it on. But there are some very real moments where I'm super anxious. You know what I mean? And I may not show it, but I might be fighting, behind closed doors or
But I think that's the warrior in the garden
yeah,
analogy. Everyone likes it. They quote it all the time. But I think unless you really were or are a
yeah,
warrior that is now in a garden place, you never fully understand what that really means.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Like, yeah, it feels cool. It sounds good.
yeah,
Everyone quotes it and memorizes it. But until you really understand the true depth of that, I'm like, dude, shut up. You don't get
yeah,
it. Because I think the warrior being in the garden, yeah, he's in a more peaceful place. Yeah, he's like a tested badass. He's been through some stuff and he wants peace now. But I think the thing that people don't talk about is like he probably still has that itch somewhere where he's like the you're longing for that feeling of feeling alive again.
yeah,
Like that
yeah.
feeling of building once again, that
Oh,
thrill,
you
that
probably feel that all the time as a retired police officer.
bro, all the time.
Yeah. For
All
me,
the
I get
time.
that more in the dance space, because I danced for over 20 years, and then last time I performed was probably 7 years ago. Last time I taught was probably 5 years ago. but I'm about to go to the Philippines soon, and they asked me to teach a workshop there. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm excited. It's like getting back into it, but I will say my body don't move the same way. I was actually doing some training right before this,
Oh, nice.
and I had to do a long warm up. You know, I was surprised that I could still move better than I thought I would. But yeah, I get it. Like the warrior in the garden, that's a tough place to be,
Yeah.
you know? But I will say also, I've learned appreciation for gardeners too. A gardener in a war is just as necessary at the end of the day.
Go into that a little bit.
Well, even right now, with the war going on, we see resources being halted, you know, and if you can't, one of the fastest way to take down an enemy is take away their food. Yeah. So what if that analogy was just saying that just appreciate where you're at in the moment, right? But both are very important. Because the gardener, they make it sound like it's just some dude.
Right.
But have you seen some farmer builds out here? Yo, they are jacked.
That is so true.
They are
That
strong.
is so true. Yep, yep, that's
Yeah.
so true.
So I don't know, man. Maybe that's a hot take, but I appreciate both
I
sides.
like that.
Yeah.
I've never, yeah, I'm kind of, I fall on the side like, yeah, this guy's got a pitchfork and you're gonna throw him in a war, kind of like the Israelites, right? Like they didn't have swords; they had to fight with like,
I bet you there were some bad dudes that
right,
were gardening.
right, exactly. They got a
Yeah.
shovel and all that.
Oh yeah, they could probably just fine tune, switch it up to a sword. Gardening it takes effort, man.
And there's
I'm telling
patience
you.
and there's wisdom behind that too. I
Yeah.
get that. I respect that. Okay, that's cool. I gotta chew on that a little bit. I gotta chew
But
on that.
what if you're both warrior and a gardener? Oh, game over.
Game
Game
over.
over.
I'll
War
kill you,
is
then I'll
won.
plant some corn. I'll plant some corn and all this other stuff. Got you. Got you.
But even that story, so it reminds me of Noah. So Noah spent years building that ark. But then right after all the rain went away, you know what it says in the scripture? It says Noah then became a farmer and his life changed in an instant. But the scripture says that he became a farmer. So what if building the ark was important, but what if building or being the farmer now was also just as important and just a new assignment that God gave him?
Oh, I love that. So
For you,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe you were building that ark as a cop, but now God is saying, "Hey, I want you to be a farmer." Both are just as like, yeah, being a cop, that's super sexy, super exciting. You know what I mean?
Have you seen these corn though?
But being a farmer,
uh,
what if God's saying, "Hey, in my eyes, it's just as important." Yeah,
Ooh.
in my eyes, building the ark is important. In my eyes, farming is important.
See, I love this conversation because I think that's the powerful thing about these type of conversations and podcasts is I know there's a lot of the warrior type background guys that will relate to me.
Yeah.
Um, and there's some that won't, and that's okay. But I love the perspective you come in because you see wisdom in both. It's not just one way fits all, but it's like there's wisdom in there too, even though guys who look like me and sound like me may not immediately see the value, but now they're like, oh, there's some actually real biblical truth and wisdom behind a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's all just obviously none of this is scripted. This is all just conversation we're having on the fly. But I think these are the beautiful things that we can capture and actually utilize, even though social media is not the greatest place to spend the most of your time. This is hopefully kind of shifting things in a more positive light because of these type of conversations.
And like at the end of the day, what if following Jesus is just simply being obedient?
Yeah.
You know, like I'll be honest, when I was working at the car wash, even though it was really hard, really felt like that's where I was supposed to be. And it's a weird dynamic, and I'm grateful for it. But what if everything's a lot more simple and a lot less extravagant than what we think? Yeah.
It reminds me of this conversation I was having And I was saying that our purpose is the same all around, is to know God and glorify Him. But our calling is what will change depending on the season of life we're at. So the guy I was talking to, my buddy Austin, he's currently an airline pilot, and I'm like, your calling is to know God and glorify Him. I'm sorry, your purpose is to know God and glorify Him. But right now, your calling is to be a pilot. And how do you do the both? How do you do both? How do you glorify God in your career? Maybe you just by the standard that you hold for yourself, the example that you set, the reflection you're able to show. And then maybe later on, He takes you into another business, and that's your new calling. But your same purpose is always going to be there. Just the avenue and the outlet that you output that into, that can change.
Yeah, the Bible says whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. Eating and drinking is the most basic thing you can do. You know what I mean? The most simple part of life. And if you could do that for the glory of God, anything can be. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Well, brother, I appreciate you being on the show. You got to come back.
Thanks for having me.
We got to
It
do
was
it
a good
again.
time.
We got to do it again. We
Yeah, I
got to
hope it
do
was a
it.
blessing.
It
God
is.
is good, man.
There's just so many things that came from this conversation that I'm like, I'm trying to be present and keep talking, but I'm also like, damn, that was good. That was
Well,
good.
this is a new friendship, and it's kind of cool. We're kind of documenting our new friendship right now.
Yeah.
What if, like, 10 years from now, we look back like, yo, remember that one time we finally met each other
Yeah.
and then we filmed a podcast?
And look how different life can be and would be especially when you put God in the middle. You just don't know where He's going to take you.
I love
And
that.
you're literally watching this real time as we build out Redwood, as you're giving us so much insight and input from your experience. And then like, I'm kind of sharing things that, hey, I think these are kind of the next things that are happening. And at some point, hopefully those ministries will cross and we'll be able to do something cool with it. But at the end of the day, I think this relationship is just, it was ordained and it was just a God perfectly timed thing.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the love. Thank you for the time having me on.
Of course, man. Thank you for, again, being on the show. Thank you for speaking to our audience on July 11th. And I'm excited to see where God takes this.
Yeah. Let's get it.